Return to Moria stands as a testament to the enduring allure of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth, inviting players to rediscover the mystique of the Mines of Moria in this latest installment. Developed by a passionate team of Tolkien enthusiasts, the game seamlessly blends classic elements with contemporary gaming advancements, promising an immersive experience for fans of the fantasy genre. One of the first things you will notice is the native ultrawide support. Both 32:9 and 21:9 work like a charm, though I wish there was a way to make the minimap larger. The visual landscape of Return to Moria is a true triumph, capturing the essence of the cavernous depths with an unparalleled attention to detail. From the ornate carvings on the cavern walls to the ethereal glow of phosphorescent fungi, the graphics contribute significantly to the game's immersive atmosphere. Lighting effects are skillfully employed to enhance the sense of foreboding, making every twist and turn in the mines a visually stunning experience. My initial expectation was that the whole game would take place in a constant darkness, and while this is often the case, we also have illuminated areas and different biomes, if you will. It is not as dark a game as you may expect it to be, at least that's how I felt. In terms of gameplay, Return to Moria is rather simple when it comes to its survival mechanics. You do have to eat and sleep, and while your gear is still bad, temperature is also a factor. Later on, that gets replaced by the game's darkness mechanic, in which our dwarves begin suffering from despair and dying slowly if they stay in the dark for too long. I found this to be quite the stupid mechanic initially, since the dwarves often live in perpetually dark environments, Moria actually being one of them. But the game teaches us that this darkness is different and much more like a curse. The simplicity also stems from the fact that things like meat don't spoil. In fact, none of the raw materials do, which is very convenient. The more exhausted our dwarf becomes, the less stamina he has, so there's not much he can do besides having to wait for it to recover. But even that can be countered with specific foods instead of having to sleep, though it is an expensive solution. The traditional sleep is still the best and cheapest option you have at your disposal. My point is, Moria is one of the less punishing survival games, and should you die, you can simply go back to where it happened and pick up your gear without any repercussions. The game features a pretty decent character creation where you essentially make your own dwarf, whether it's a male or a female one, and something that I found fun was the fact that they respected the core material. Therefore, you can actually make a female dwarf with a big bushy beard, just as the dwarves in Tolkien's stories were always telling us about, and that's something that I was actually hoping for and was very entertained when I saw it. The game's combat system, while solid, may feel somewhat dated to those accustomed to more recent titles. Even so, I still found it to be quite enjoyable, and we have to consider the fact that our character progression stems only from our dwarves' gear. They will not level up in any way other than having better gear, and that is probably one of the best decisions that could have been made here. In other games, you see a fight and you consider fighting for experience because experience will level you up and make you stronger. But in Moria, you fight for the loot. And I can't stress enough how nice it is to kill everything in your path and know that pretty much all drops are useful. The weapon variety surprised me as well, since I'm usually always thinking of axes when dwarves come into play, but here we have one- and two-handed weapons of different kinds as well as shields. And speaking of shields, I have to address some weird things about the combat. First and foremost, you can block with a two-handed weapon just as you would if you had a sword and a shield. What's funny about this is that the only difference between those two options is that your shield's durability will be drained if you use it, while if you block with your weapon, that simply means that the weapon will break faster. In terms of effectiveness of blocking, both are always equal, and blocking is extremely overpowered in this game. Hold your block and you are essentially immune to most damage, no matter where it comes from. Even if I get stabbed in the back, it does no damage as long as I'm holding my block. Essentially, I have a 360 bubble of almost no damage, almost complete damage negation, with the exception of some status effects and some rare enemies that can hit through blocks. Now couple this with the legendary shield, which you get early on in the game and which comes with infinite durability, and you could pretty much block forever. Very few enemies in the game can hit through your block, as I have mentioned already. So yes, the game's combat is fun and rewarding, but it is not very well thought out. Me and my two other dwarven brothers abused this as much as we could and still died plenty of times. So make no mistake, the combat is still very challenging, so feel no shame when using these mechanics to your advantage. While we may be noobs, we still weren't the worst players, so I'm pretty sure that it's not just because we're bad, the game is challenging. With that having been said, Return to Moria's real charm lies in the exploration aspect. It's just a ton of fun to explore the labyrinthine tunnels and face off against familiar creatures from Tolkien's expansive world. But I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that the game has procedural generation in place. And trust me when I say that I was very worried once I heard these dirty words. And while you will still end up seeing the same environments quite often with the same layout of buildings, etc., it really wasn't much of a problem this time. Would I have preferred a purely handcrafted map? Yes, without a doubt. But as procedural generation goes, I've seen far worse. I mean, most of the places are mine tunnels, so you won't notice it that much. And exploration here is still as rewarding as you would expect it to be from a game of this type. Not only do you find more and more valuable materials and new blueprints, but you also find new enemies, bosses, and story pieces which help you make sense of the whole situation. Return to Moria excels in its narrative, seamlessly weaving a compelling story into the fabric of Middle-earth mythology. The game captures the essence of Tolkien's storytelling with well-crafted dialogue and engaging quests which evoke a sense of purpose and urgency. The lore is treated with the utmost respect, providing a satisfying experience for longtime fans while remaining accessible to newcomers. In addition to that, our characters are fun to listen to, in part due to the excellent voice acting and in part due to the many songs which they will sing on different occasions. Even after having heard them all many times, they still never grew old and were enjoyable. Not to mention that singing usually is also connected to some kind of beneficial effect, whether they sing while mining ore, which gives a buff and makes this action cost no stamina, or they sing at a statue of their king which dispels the nearby corruption. It is all great. In addition to that, the dwarves will inspire each other to sing together, and that's even more fun to listen to. The story is simple at first. We're trapped inside Moria after an initial explosion and have to find a way out. As we go deeper, we find out that the mines are not abandoned and there's a lot more to this place than we had ever expected. Clearly going out will not be as easy as finding an exit and just walking through it. I particularly enjoyed how the crafting and base building were made into part of the narrative. On several occasions, our heroes will have to repair some path in order to progress. And speaking of crafting and base building, the system in place here is very extensive. We can pretty much establish bases anywhere we want and even put fast travel points. Doing so costs a lot of resources and you will probably not be placing bases everywhere you go, but the possibility to do so is there, and if you wanted to, you could. Similarly to other games of this genre, you have different materials which provide different amounts of protection, and this serves a purpose, since the orcs will attempt to raid our bases occasionally. The good news is that this only happens while you are within that base. My first worry was that I will have to run around and fend off attacks or have my bases destroyed, but luckily this is not the case. A raid can only happen at a base if you or someone else from your party is there during that time. It will not happen while you're on an expedition to explore. In addition to crafting stuff in your base, you can also do what is known as field crafting, where you can place platforms to help yourself reach higher places or descend safely, and craft some minor things like torches and pickaxes, etc. Stuff that you might need on the field, provided you have the necessary resources on hand. In addition to everything I've mentioned, one thing to consider is the noise you make, which will alert orcs in the vicinity and increase the chance of a horde rushing your location while you're mining, for example. And that can be a real problem, especially early on in the game when you are not geared enough. A horde of orcs is a real threat, and that is probably also when you will die at the start. The good news is that this is something you can prevent from happening if you kill the local orc boss. Then the orc presence in that area is lowered and the mechanic is disabled for this section of the map. How do you defeat said boss? Just explore and find the local orc town. He will be in there somewhere. I personally found the gameplay loop to be very enjoyable, combining combat, exploration and material gathering in equal measure, and my friends and I had tons of fun while playing and exploring the game. The thing to consider is that this is standard stuff for the genre, but not everyone can pull it off, and especially not when you think about it being in a mine. It kind of sounds bland and boring. I was initially worried that the mine as a setting is going to suck, but it really didn't. While the initial playthrough offers a captivating experience, the replay value is somewhat constrained. The linear nature of the main quest line may discourage multiple playthroughs, but the random nature of each different map can give it a fresh feeling after all. The game will still allow you to take your dwarf and all of its gear and backpack content, which essentially means that you are allowed to start a new playthrough as an overpowered, hyper-geared dwarf. In my eyes, that made for a fun second playthrough where you suddenly have a huge advantage over almost almost every enemy in the game. This made the experience very different for me because now I was exploring knowing that I am the apex predator in that mountain. The game is still suffering from a few minor bugs, but nothing game breaking. In fact, almost everything we encounter was just cosmetic, like holding the torch the wrong side, basically burning my hand. But there are a few design choices where I have to wonder if the devs never playtested them. For example, our dwarves can sing while mining ore from a node. This gives us a stamina buff and makes mining a lot more efficient. The button to start singing when it appears as a proc is E, same as the button to pick up things from the ground. If your bag should be full, the ore and stones will simply drop to the ground at your feet, and now the game offers you to press E to pick them up. When you do that, nothing happens since your bag's already full. It just jumps up and you hear this noise telling you that your bag's full. If your dwarf is inspired to sing, you have to press E as well. But in the scenario I have mentioned, the game will prioritize picking up the ore at your feet, so pressing E will essentially do nothing and you cannot start singing. You can't change the button to sing either, that's really annoying. No mining buff for you if your inventory is full. Although you get the prompt, but it just won't work. Another issue was the teleportation, which is how the game offers you the fast travel feature. If I teleport and appear at the location on the other side, I have to move so that my teammates can teleport as well. Should they do it at the same time as I did, or while I'm still standing in front of the teleportation stone on the other side of the teleportation, the game sees that there's no space in front of it and will send the other players at other locations which seem predetermined but are very far from where the teleporter is, sometimes hundreds of meters away. We had to develop a system where I teleport first, then I tell the second person to do it once I have moved, and then he does the same with the third one. It just seems weird to me that we have to do this. Why couldn't the game just determine, let's say, 5 spots around the teleportation stone so that everyone can teleport? If spot 1's taken, put position clockwise on the next spot a meter away, not 100 meters away. That's just weird. I suspect that this will be fixed in later patches, but since it wasn't addressed with the first one, I had to mention it. The musical score in Return to Moria is nothing short of exceptional. Capturing the epic and emotional tones of the Middle-earth universe is something that the devs are really good at. From haunting melodies in the dark corners of Moria to triumphant themes during epic battles, the soundtrack enhances the overall gaming experience and immerses players even further into the rich tapestry of Tolkien's world. Overall, Return to Moria is a heartfelt homage to Tolkien's legacy, successfully blending nostalgia with modern gaming elements. While some aspects may show signs of age, the game's unwavering dedication to Middle-earth's lore, stunning visuals, engaging storyline, and an enchanting soundtrack make it a worthwhile journey for anyone eager to return to the fabled depths of the mountain. We had a great time playing it, and our enjoyment came from 3 major factors. Firstly, as fans of the lore, we loved seeing places we knew from the books and the movies. The game actually makes a lot of references to those. Secondly, we loved the way the survival aspects of the game were executed. It's less hardcore and more casual, but still very true to the genre. Lastly, Return to Moria offers a great co-op experience. You can play with others from start to finish, and there are no restrictions in place. Everyone can build, craft, consume, etc. It's not like the host of the game is the main guy and the others are just assisting. No, all 3 dwarves in our case were the main guys. All in all, I have to say, Return to Moria is one of the best survival games I have played in a long time, and I can easily recommend it to pretty much anyone. It's one of those rare games that are also a lot of fun to play alone, by the way. So even if you don't have anyone to play it with, you can still have tons of fun on your own with this one. And we've reached the end of this review. Thank you for being so patient. I apologize for having taken so long between the last upload and this one, but this game is long. It took me a while, and I really wanted to be sure that I'm not missing anything, so I had to play through it at least once before even starting to write this script. So thank you, dear viewer, for your patience, and thank you for watching Game Filter. I hope this review has been informative and entertaining, and if you wish to support me, my Patreon link is in the description of this video. This is Nino, signing out.